So yeah, you kind of mentioned a little bit about the multiverse in one of your videos. Something I'm fascinated with, and I tend to think that Neville is exploring this in Out of This World. Not necessarily specifically, but when we're talking about assumption, these are, and he's saying everything's already created. I mean, he's kind of saying when you're assumption, you're assuming a reality that's already there. You're just moving yourself into that. That's kind of maybe how I'm working. He's not going to go and explain his concept of physics to these audiences back then.
Well, yeah, one, you're
He's
going to
giving a
lose
very
everybody.
simple way.
Yeah, you're going to lose yeah. Well, I mean, the concept of quantum and all these different things, right? I mean, you could
Right.
lose people in some of this crazy newfound science, but ultimately there's a lot of interesting experiments that have been done that indicate there's more power to this esoteric stuff than I think people want to lend credit to.
Right.
And again, you have to tap dance around it ultimately, because some people can be very sensitive about what they're, you push them too far too quickly and they get very, very upset. Right. And so it's a nudging and a gentle awakening, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is. At first it is a little scary. I feel bad for the people that haven't really awoken yet at all, because I do remember when that happened to me, and there was a lot of anger. Like, I felt like I'd been kind of betrayed and lied to, and then eventually you're like, okay, but now I realize I own this. I control this. And I can do something about it. And that was really a big shift for me, where I finally felt like I started living life for the first time, rather than
It's very common what you just said. I think it leads to some loneliness. People withdraw a little bit.
Well, I think it's your circle at the time too, right? Like, I'm going way against the conventionality, and the circle's still very much of that normal. And I'm now kind of poo-pooing on their world. And so, yeah, you kind of get a little bit rejected or shunned even amongst your closest friends. And it's a tough transition. But ultimately what you find and how it plays out is, once you kind of walk through that door alone, there's a whole bunch of friends waiting for you on the other side. And that's kind of the cool part about it. So,
well, my first videos, I was afraid to say the word God. I would kick around it, and I would use universe. I wanted my message to be heard, but I didn't want to push people away, because I knew, because of myself, if I heard that word, I'm going to I'm going to go to the next one, because, and so Neville's just like, hey, this is it. He's going to, and so as I'm reading it, I'm starting to almost become the state of Neville, where it's okay to say that stuff. The interesting, is there a state of Neville? When I'm reading his lectures, I'm finding, beyond all these other things, I believe there's kind of it's like this teacher of the awakening state. And I'm finding as I read the lectures, I'm entering the state of Neville a little bit. He talks about all these other states.
I think that's tapping into as we talked about, that infinite intelligence, the idea, the concept that I feel like each chapter he wrote, this is kind of where I'm at least anyway with Neville, is I feel like, and it's kind of like us, and I think you and I can relate to this for sure.
Yeah.
But I feel like each chapter is like he woke up one morning and said, here's sort of a metaphor I can use to describe how this works. And I feel like that's what you and I like do. We try to make videos on expanding consciousness, on different techniques. But ultimately, it's all about taking the reins of our life. Ultimately, to simplify it greatly, like, take the reins of your own life, and you can do whatever you'd like. Done.
You can do whatever you like.
Turn the video off. That's all you need to hear, right? Like, I mean, but here we are daily trying to come up with. Here he was selling books. Here he was creating a chapter a day, probably, when he was writing. Or maybe he had a couple cool ideas that he jotted down on a napkin while he was down at the, I don't know what a fast food place would have been in the 50s. There probably was no such thing. The diner.
Some diner,
yeah,
right?
The diner.
So let me ask, it's always fun to ask somebody that's delved into this. Have you have personal examples of the law of assumption, or things happening and coming into your life? I know you've talked about it in other videos, but we can share it here.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just need to hear that, a story of how when you started to apply this, you saw, and it seemed like a miracle at the time. Like you started it and wow, this stuff works. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm going to use the radio only because it just serves as such a great example in a lot of ways. And it really was before I feel like I overcomplicated the understanding of law of attraction by studying the law of attraction. Because honestly, it's like, I don't know if you've ever golfed, but in a golf swing, there's about 1,000 things you can do wrong to hit the ball wrong. And there's only one way to swing the club perfectly. And geez, if you think about any of that stuff while you're going into it, you're going to jack the shot. I feel like kind of law of attraction's the same way. Like, a lot of us think way too much about it. But back when I truly understood that it was all about holding a vision and just understanding that this is going to happen, period. And that is law of assumption without a doubt in its finest form. I was doing radio at small markets and all this, wanted to get to a better station, didn't really even have any good equipment available to me to be able to really make a better demo, but I still had the demo I used to get out there. Ultimately, my girlfriend worked at a playhouse that happened to have a pretty significant bit of costumes that they'd accumulated over the years. So they had a costume shop. Well, ironically, their afternoon DJ at the station I ended up at happened to contact her and say, hey, we're doing this can-can awareness thing that we're trying to raise money for people, and we wanted to dress up. There's 3 of us guys. We wanted to dress up in can-can costumes. Do you happen to have can-can costumes that we could rent from you? And she said, well, my boyfriend happens to want to be a DJ with you guys. I'll let you have them for free, or I'll donate them for free if you take your demo to your boss. And they said, okay, done. So I literally manifested my connection, my one-on-one, my now he knows who I am. And then I literally contacted and left the guy a message every day for 3 months. Every single day. I called him and said, so, just contacting you. I'm just not sure when you're ready to start, but I know that job's mine. Anyway, looking forward to hearing from you. Literally like 3 times he answered, just let me through, and I'd talk to him. But yeah, ultimately I decided that was my job. I don't care what anybody says. I'm getting it. And I did.
Right.
And I had people tell me no. I had people tell me you're crazy. I had people tell me why. I didn't listen to it. I didn't care. I didn't care. I didn't see it. I didn't see the possibility of it. People say, well, how do you ignore it? It's like, I only looked at what I was going to do.
How do you ignore? That's the biggest thing that people are learning. I talk to people in small towns or terrible countries that are looking at their environment and they see this reality they don't want to be in. And it's the biggest learning experience for us is how do we ignore this reality around us to move into the state that we really want? It's I think it's a big part of our learning process in this.
Well, that's why I think one of the mistakes that many people make is they kind of have such a destination specific thought that until that destination's reached, they don't consider themselves successful. If they've got a destination that's 100 steps, and I've taken 15 steps towards it, a lot of people say, I'm still not successful. And other people would say, dude, you've taken 15 steps. You're 15% of the way there.
Right.
And it's the difference in seeing things. And I think that's the difference. When I was going for a big radio job or a better radio job or, make something of myself in that, the 5 years I didn't have the job, I never went, I'm never going to get the job or it's not ever going to happen. It was always it's going to happen. I know people get really hung up on the it's all happened already right now. And yes, I knew there was a radio job where I was doing it. I would imagine it. I could see myself doing it. I knew there was a right now version of it. I just didn't know what stepping stones to hop on to get to there. And again, I think that's the other thing that's really hard for people is dealing with the fact that if I plant a seed in the soil, it takes days to grow. It takes days before I see anything pop out of the seed. And then it can take a long time for that thing to gestate far enough to be interesting or useful. And people don't want that. They want to put the seed in the thing and they want a tree tomorrow. And wow, we could really solve a lot of problems in our planet if we could do that. But ultimately, forests take years and years to grow.
Right. Like I was listening to Sadhguru the other day, and he was saying, you don't manifest the flower, you manifest the soil and the manure and the water that goes into the flower. The flower is just a result that comes after.
And that's what manifesting is. You just, in a nutshell, that is what manifesting really is. We plant the seed. We create the place for it to grow. We do all of that. The consciousness is the love and the nourishment. It's the energy that allows it to grow. And it will grow. It does grow. You don't keep looking at the soil tomorrow morning. I did a video recently where I look out there tomorrow morning like, this seed's broken. It didn't work. So it's not going to magically just appear. The flower's not going to, you're not going to wake up and the flower's going to be there. And people think when they hear these teachings, they're going to wake up and the flower's going to be there. Why didn't it show when I woke up? The flower wasn't there. Can you imagine how pissed these people must be with that plant that takes 7 years to bloom, right? It only blooms every 7 years. They're like, this is ridiculous, man. I don't have this kind of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that patience is a part built into this wonderful process, and we're supposed to go through it, and that's what's so fun.
It's the experience of it. It's like raising a child. It's all those analogies, and people, the best approach in my mind, at least the thing that helped me really shift towards a more positive experience, was by acknowledging that it's in process and getting away from this thinking of I'm not successful until I have the thing that I'm chasing towards. Like I'm heading towards it. And as for me, income, and I'm sure you can relate, like income, like when I came back from Tennessee and basically started my whole life over, you know, I started pretty low and I've come a long way and I'm continuing to go. And it's a process. Am I pissed that I'm not a billionaire right now? No. I'm heading there though. And that's the thing. It's the experience. That's part of the fun. Like when you're surfing, you're out here in the West Coast. I mean, longboarding in Sanof, I've done it before and it's a pain to paddle out there. But I'll tell you what, when you finally hop on that wave and just let it take you, it is one of the greatest feelings I have ever experienced in life. And that is just letting the flow take you.
Sometimes you need to build up the right speed to get on that wave.
Yeah, and that's the work. Yeah, awesome analogy. Wonderfully said. Wonderfully
and you
said.
might get knocked off, but it's okay because you can go right back. There's another wave that's coming.
Turn back around, paddle back out. I just think
surfing is such a huge, perfect metaphor for life, and I agree with
especially
that.
For people like us that are like, surf's up, dude. You know, I mean, Californians for sure. But yeah, exactly. And it really is. It's allowing it to happen. It's a beautiful seed that you've planted. It is a tree inside, the faith of a mustard seed. Like it's a mustard tree inside that seed. It truly, truly is.
Right.
Let it grow. Nourish it, love it, believe in it, know that it's happening, and don't constantly keep digging it out saying this seed's broken and throwing it back down and planting another seed and starting over again. It's like, all right, well, you can start the clock over now. You just threw the other seed out. Thank you.
Exactly. Well said. I love it. I really feel like so far we're learning this and bouncing it. It's so amazing. You're going through the same things that I am. I really want to know, as somebody, I guess it goes back to my old NLP days. I like to model people that are successful. And so you've been and acquired this information. I want to model you. I want to do the Dan Radio style modeling. So when you wake up in the morning, do you have a meditation? When you go to sleep, do you have a meditation? What do you do during the day? What's your habits and rituals? If I wanted to take the state of Dan Radio style, what have you kind of perfected that works for you?
I woke up, got out of bed, I dragged a comb across my head, went downstairs and had a cup. Honestly, I wake up every day looking forward to what is before me. I know that every day stuff is going to show itself towards my dream. I wake up literally like excited. I'm like, it's kind of like waking up and looking at a crystal clear blue sky and just being like, what a beautiful day. I'm glad I'm alive. Like, it's a really exciting thing. I start off with a nice little meditation. I'll be honest, I don't usually do more than 5 minutes. It's just enough to kind of get chill and calm. These people are like, I do an hour meditation and then I Tai Chi for 26 days. You know, it's like, I don't have that kind of time. I got too much stuff
Everybody's
going on in my
different.
work.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. And if you can, good on you. That's probably awesome. Like, you could probably, meditate under a waterfall and be fine. Like, I probably can't. But that being said, yeah, I just work towards it. I've got ideas and directions on where I'd like to go. Got just taking steps in that general direction. I honestly think the hardest part's figuring out what it is in life we want. I mean, especially for me, I've been a service industry type person for so much of my life that it took a lot of deprogramming to think a little bit more about myself. I mean, again, YouTube and all that, I love helping people. That's why I do it. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like I'm starting to appreciate the fact that it's okay to want to have nicer things in my life. It's okay to want to be a little more wealthy. It's okay to want to have more success. And it's just part of the experience of being here. So it's again, kind of you were talking about earlier. It says, I think as we evolve in our understanding and start to get that modicum of power, it's important to use it as wisely as we can. And you know, just like you, I make mistakes too. I don't plan on stopping making mistakes anytime soon. I'm pretty sure I'm going to keep doing that probably well into my life. So I try to learn from them. And I think that's the important part. And I go through life fearless and unafraid, because it's okay. As long as you're not intentionally harming people, as long as you're not, intentionally going out of bounds all the time, you're going to be okay. If you're constantly trying to cheat the system will at some point smack you back. It's just the way it is. It's a fun little playground we all make.
So another concept that I like to discuss is the mental diet. Neville emphasized, and we're living in an age where it's hyper, everybody wants our attention. You talk about it with marketing. We have a political campaigns going on. It's going to be in every radio station. So clearly that stuff, the news we're getting everywhere, is influencing our state. And so once we come to this awareness, do you have techniques, tools, tricks that for how you access outside information? Do you listen to the news? How do you?
Yeah, so great questions. Few things. One, Goddard talks about being careful about, like, if it was the 12 prophets or 12 disciples or whatever that chapter, but he talks about kind of what you allow yourself to listen to. And so I am careful about making sure that I try not to listen to things that are going to affect me emotionally in a negative way. And so if it's something that I tend to get angry when I watch, I don't watch it anymore. I literally have stopped watching like news, or some news anyways. There are places that I have found over time that offer me a nice perspective in a way that I can handle and enjoy, and it seems to be covering some of the stuff that I'm interested in. So again, it's one of those things where I try to be very selective about what I view. And the other part of it is, for the most part, this is my world, right? So why do I give a crap what other people are thinking about their world or their version of the world? And I realized if I don't pay attention to certain things, I don't have to see those things in my life. And I don't, to a large extent. So I've also realized that by staying away from a lot of that conventionality, I've actually managed to make my life much more peaceful, tranquil, happy. And so ultimately we own our world, and we put filters on. I consider it like glasses. We put filters on that have certain polarity blockers. And you put on a good positive set of those, or a good neat set of those, and you start looking at the world, and there could be chaos right in front of you, and you don't see it. You just don't see it.
Exactly.
It's cool.
So the person that says, well, then you're just clueless. You're ignoring this. These things are important.
Says who?
Exactly.
I mean, clueless. Okay. I mean, people say, I honestly, it's funny, is ignorance is bliss. And it truly is. If I don't know about something, is pity party as I maybe could think about that. It's really, so what are you, living under a rock? And it's like, yeah, maybe he is, but he doesn't know about it. That's awesome. Think of how tarnished our minds are because of some of the crap we know. And here's an individual that doesn't know about any of that stuff. He's just got this happy little cheery world he's been living in. So good on you. That's awesome. I'm sorry we just ruined your world with this horrible stuff, right?
So the game changer for me, the technique that really I've seen biggest results is revision. And it's a wonderful idea. And as I'm finding, the quicker I try to revise something, I have a theory.
You mean like on the spot revisions, or are you talking about things in the past that you're revising?
I'm starting to, my theory is we have these different timelines of different possible parallel realities all around us. And if we revise, even if that still happened, it's like we're moving into that general sector of reality where it didn't happen. And so even if somebody remembers it happening, the influence or effects of it, I'm still in this. The more I do it, the more amazing I see these revisions that I've made. I wanted to get your opinion. Obviously, you've started to apply revision, and what your opinion of it and how it has affected you.
So I guess my take on revision's a little different maybe than some. So one, I view mistakes I've made in the past as and really I would say probably almost all of them, maybe all of them. I have to maybe think about a couple of them, but I consider the mistakes I've made in the past to be extremely valuable.
Exactly.
They hurt, and they might have hurt somebody, and I'm certainly not proud of that by any means. But again, it wasn't something I continued to do. I learned from it. I've learned and become a better human for it. So when the idea of going back and revising any mistakes I've made in the past, I see that as kind of undoing my wisdom. And I see that being counterproductive, because if something didn't happen, I could no longer know what I know now because of it. Could I? Like, I had to go through that. I had to experience the anger it caused that individual, or the fact that it literally cost me a relationship. She would never see me again because of that tragedy. So I learned. You don't do that kind of stuff. You don't hurt people like that. That's not okay. And I never did it again. So would I revise that? No, I don't. And I know it's frustrating to people because there's a lot of people that look at something they've made in the past and really just don't want to let it be what it is, which is a mistake. And they want to undo it. So I get it. And I've suggested that, yes, I do, from what you're talking about, I do believe there's power to that. I believe you can do that. I know Goddard talks about revising things in the past, and the way he kind of describes it is from your present. Once you've revised the past, from your present, you take steps towards this new reality. And that, I think, makes more sense from a spiritual standpoint or a life standpoint, because I don't know. I have a harder time with I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be in a parallel universe. I
don't think that's what's, but for example, I own a bookstore. So I might have a slow sales day, make $400, and I might revise and imagine the day that I made $800 that day. And so I might make $1,200 the next day, where it all averages out that I made that amount. Yeah. That's the kind of things I'm seeing.
Yeah, for sure. Revising my current, or when I'm having thoughts that are negative. Yes, I think that's one of the best uses of it, because you're staying very in your now.
It's like a course correction. Yeah. Even though I did have that $400 day, I moved into this. Well, you still made that amount. That's what I'm seeing.
And funny you should say that. I don't know. I'm thinking about, like, relationships for me are probably the place where I would typically revise what happened. Right. Like, I said something I shouldn't have and I felt bad. I'll be honest. There was one example. This is horrible. What the hell? I'll give an example. It upset two people and I felt bad about it, but I still kind of meant what I said. There was a coffee shop I used to work at, right? And I worked there as a part-time job, especially as I was building up my other side of my life where I actually made real money. And I always kind of, saw it as sort of a job you do, not forever. I mean, you can own one, that's kind of cool, and you might even manage one, but you're still kind of limited on your income. You're not going to, make a ton of money managing a small coffee shop. So I kind of said, hey, so what's your plans when you finally, get into, get into your real job? And that was the real job was where I got in trouble. But again, it was one of those things where after getting done pissing two people off that were working there at the same time, I spent time with it. I revised it. I'm like, no, and I got to understand where they're at in their lives. I mean, it was me at one point, so I get it. But it was like, you're being insensitive to where they're at. And you're being a little bit kind of, DB, if you will. And that's not cool. And so by revising it, I ended up actually kind of smoothing over those relationships and became cool with them again. Now, is it because I revised? Is it because I changed reality? I don't know. But it worked out to the same effect. So I definitely am fond of doing that. We can
probably overanalyze it and make it more complicated than it. Something's happening and we don't need to know what it is.
It works, right?
But it works. Yeah, it works. We can see the results of it. I do think that we have stuff in the past, traumas and that pulls our energy away. And just by revising it, it kind of stops that. Like we had a wound and it just keeps on bleeding. We just put a Band-Aid over it from the past. And it's like that our loss of energy in the present moment seems to go away. It's like we're subconsciously losing energy from these past events a little bit. And maybe by revising,
maybe that's another like cool kind of healing technique that, I mean, I just maybe haven't played around with it enough with past stuff. But like I've talked about, Ho'oponopono is one that's talked about a lot. The one I talk about a lot is astral letters. But I mean, that's the thing is I think when you find a technique that kind of helps you deal with mistakes from the past that maybe you still feel bad about, because I think that's ultimately when it's a problem, is if you still feel bad about it, you're still holding on to it rather than kind of letting it go and be what it is, which is wisdom. So yeah, good point. Good on you.
So favorite book by Neville Goddard?
My favorite book. It's really a toss-up between The Law and The Promise and Your Faith is Your Fortune. I know he wrote Your Faith is Your Fortune way before, which surprised me because I actually, when I went and looked it up, I was like, I'm figuring it was going to be the other direction. I actually thought he was shifting more into the consciousness stuff rather than starting with it. But I have found that to be beyond enlightening. It's caused me to pay a lot of attention to how I'm feeling most of the time. And I realize I do a lot of stuff without noticing I do it, and that's what's cool. I mean, because a lot of this is positive programming that I've done over years, and so I'm doing good things, but it's like, no, I'm actually seeing myself do it, which I never really noticed it until being aware of it. And so that, for me, has been really, really, really cool. Like Your Faith, The Law and the Promise, is stuff that I've understood conceptually and wisdomly for a long time. But The Promise, not as much, but the Law for sure. And yeah, so again, those are probably the two I would say.
Perfect. And so, favorite lecture outside of the?
I honestly haven't probably listened to enough of his lectures. I apologize.
Yeah.
I mean, the what's the one that the Pearls of Swine? That was kind of interesting because someone was talking about astrology and all that stuff.
Right.
That was actually a pretty cool lecture, and the one where he talks about everyone or everything is you pushed out is a pretty cool lecture too.
Right.
Those are probably the two I've listened to.
Well, this has been a genuine joy to speak with you and meet you, and thank you for taking the time on a Saturday to talk with me. So I'm so appreciative. It's so awesome to meet you. I learned so much. We could probably talk for hours.
Well, we should do this again for sure. I think
let's
that would
for sure do it
step
again
in the right direction. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd like to see us about doing some live stuff and whatnot.
Let's
So
do it.
yeah,
Let's do some live stuff together. I think that would be great. Next question is, who's the wizard behind you?
So it reminds me of my master teacher, or at least an entity / personality, whatever, that I've worked with for a lot of years. Wizard's just a good, or that godlike look is just a very good depiction of how
He's
I
always
see this
over
individual.
your shoulder watching.
Yeah, it's funny, is this was a gift, and it's really funny with the unicorn thing, by the way, because my girlfriend, I hit her up, I'm like, hey, if you guys, because she works at a store, I'm like, if you guys have any calendars that didn't sell, I said, I just need a new one. I've got it's like a 2008 calendar that I've got people's birthdays written in and stuff. So anyway, she gets me one. Happens to be a unicorn calendar. I was just like, what are the odds, So it made me laugh. But yeah, this is just there's a fairy down here. I mean, it just really gets into the magic and mystery of the way I think life is, and there's magic that we can have within our own little domains. When we have to share our worlds with others, a lot of confusion and other things start to come into play.
Right.
But within your own little private reality, magic
that's where
is
the real
very,
magic.
very positive.
I agree.
Possible. Yeah.
So if you haven't subscribed to Dan's channel, you have to. Of course, you probably have. You haven't heard about Dan. I'm so glad you have now accessed his work. Check it out. You have daily content that's incredible and analysis that I'm constantly learning. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, if you guys haven't subscribed to Brian from my side of the fence, please. This guy's awesome.
Thanks,
he's got
man.
a great energy, and he's got some great videos. So you get in there and check him out.
Awesome.
And see what he's got. Yeah, thank you, buddy.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you.